I know it's only been a couple of months, but I decided to do an entire rewatch of Ahsoka Season 1, and that's when it dawned on me that certain attributes given to Shin are more familiar than I remember on first watch. And it was really seeing Baylan abandon her at the end of the season that triggered this. I realised Shin Hati embodies a similar lost soul complex to Ben Solo/Kylo Ren from the sequel trilogy, only this time they went for a way more exciting characterization of such a type of character. In episodes 7 to 9, Kylo Ren sparked mixed reactions. While fans initially appreciated his modern Darth Vader aesthetic, the franchise missed opportunities to delve into his reverence for his grandfather and commitment to the dark side, which was explored in concept art, but most of it never made it to screen, and it was left to the comics and novelizations to fill in the gaps in his backstory. And unfortunately, fans had to watch The Rise of Skywalker somewhat hurriedly conclude his redemption arc in a very abrupt way. And then he died, which meant we never got to see him as the full Jedi Luke had hoped for. This missed opportunity could have contributed to redeeming both the Solo and Skywalker legacies. And so now, as I say, the Ahsoka show after Season 1 presents Lucasfilm with another chance to narrate a Kylo-like story, potentially achieving success by incorporating the necessary depth and nuance. Much like Ben Solo, Shin Hati is a young, lost soul. I'm not saying their characters and personalities are identical, but there are certainly unavoidable parallels we need to talk about. A young Force user who is torn and feels abandoned by her master, and just like Ben Solo's experience, this too could send her down a darker path. Ben Solo found himself lost, adrift with conflict and possessing tremendous inner strength that instilled fear in Luke, and almost pushed the latter to contemplate ending the darkness he saw in his nephew. This pivotal moment, fear and mistrust, catapulted Ben towards the dark side, wherein he became the apprentice of Supreme Leader Snoke. Struggling to discover his purpose, Ben walked the fine line between the light and the dark. He embodied an internal conflict which was unique to him, but as you're going to see, it does kind of have a parallel to Shin. On the one hand, a part of Ben Solo still clearly held on to the light, but what plunged him into darkness were those feelings of pain, betrayal, and loss. He assumed killing his father Han Solo would make him fully embrace the dark, and become the ultimate servant of the Sith, what Snoke labelled as heir apparent to Lord Vader. The expectations of being like his grandfather was simply a dangling carrot on a string. But killing his dad, Han, did not do any of this. As Luke implied on their duel on Crate, Han was always with him. Underneath this darkness and uncertainty was a lost and fearful child, one who was scared more than anything. This left Kylo Ren susceptible to manipulation from both Snoke and the resurrected Emperor Palpatine. And so how does this relate to Shin? Well, just as Ben Solo once was, she finds herself at an interesting juncture, where she too will feel conflicted. Baylan has abandoned her, and while she's moved on to bandits, there is probably a part of her that really longs for that kind of master figure. And that is something that Ahsoka and Sabine have offered to her. Another chance, a redemption. How Lucasfilm proceeds is going to make for an intriguing comparison to Kylo's turn. Is she going to plunge herself further into darkness, which is made even more interesting considering they're on Peridea, which has some kind of Force presence? Or is she going to turn to the light, as an ultimate betrayal of what a former master saw the Jedi to be? But what's fascinating is that Shin finds herself in a similar predicament to Ben Solo before his turn. In a forsaken state, lacking motivation and direction, she's probably hurting inside, confused and lost, susceptible to the dark side. A consequence of Baylan Skoll pursuing his own goals, which is to do with the Mortis gods, essentially leaving Shin to fend for herself. We don't know the reason that Baylan took her on as his apprentice. As he said, it certainly wasn't to just be a Boken Jedi. It could have been for a higher, more powerful purpose. But now she's abandoned by both Thrawn, who left Peridea, and her former master Baylan, who is on a different part of Peridea. They're both on the same world, but with different goals. But what I find the most compelling part of the finale is that she took on a group of bandits, in a very similar power dynamic to the way Kylo took over the Knights of Ren. I don't know if you caught that on the first watch, but it's definitely a way Dave Filoni's connecting the archetype of the lost soul, Kylo and Shin, very different characters, very far apart in the timeline, but very similar attitudes, embodying that conflict. Taking over a group is a way, in my opinion, both Shin with the bandits and Kylo with the Knights of Ren, to push down their insecurities and have some kind of control in an otherwise scary galaxy where they have had very little of it. Where does this lead? Unlike Ben Solo, Shin doesn't start at the position of being a Jedi. Instead, she was a Dark Jedi, and so there are two paths. Either she joins Ahsoka and Sabine and is redeemed, or follows a path of darkness, where either the mother, Abeloth, is guiding her, or where she has no true leader and gives into the anger, fear and rage, and truly embraces the most sinister aspects of the dark side of the Force. But right now, Baylan has little concern for Shin, leaving her in a desolate state, which is quite reminiscent of a place Kylo was once in when he found Snoke. Is something gonna call to Shin that promises her power and guidance, but in reality is looking to manipulate her? I don't know if you remember this, but I actually predicted that Baylan might abandon her, and the biggest indicators of that for me, the biggest flags, is that Dave Filoni set her up as a Darth Maul kind of character, and just like Maul, who was thrown away by Palpatine after Obi-Wan cut him in half in episode 1, Shin was chucked away by her master as well. Is this going to make for an interesting arc very similar to Maul, where she sees an opportunity to create her own path and forge a new way as a leader? One where she makes the rules, it's her way or the highway. So they could borrow from Sith villains of the past. And just to throw a third Sith in there, Ivana Sakno herself said she tried to embody and channel Darth Vader. But in regards to Kylo Ren, I do see more similarities, which opens up the opportunity for Star Wars to rectify past errors and portray characters with a greater depth and even humanity. It would be a realistic approach to depict Shin's future as an individual who emerges from the shadows with a fresh perspective, but it could go either way, and in the midst of a power vacuum, she listens more closely to the Force. That could render Shin a very powerful character to reckon with down the line, maintaining a more neutral stance. But it's more invigorating because it's so uncertain, the first time we have a Dark Jedi in Star Wars canon. I also believe with Ray Stevenson's passing, when we do see Peridea again, aside from Huyang, Ahsoka and Sabine, the show could focus heavily on Shin, putting her in the spotlight as an opposing force, before deciding what to do with Baylan, if they want to recast, or if they even want to tell the rest of his story, which Dave Filoni did confirm is something you must consider. If they do decide to recast, we could have a situation where Baylan takes her back, and this addition could bring a fresh dimension to the master-student dynamic within the Star Wars franchise, allowing for a more extensive exploration of their journey rather than focusing on specific moments. And if Shin ever makes it back to the known galaxy, if she becomes an ally to Ahsoka and Sabine, I'm sure she's going to help at Luke's academy, but I'm hoping Dave Filoni doesn't just abandon her character and go for the easy route. Both Baylan and Shin are without a doubt the most interesting Disney Star Wars Force users ever created. They deserve more screen time and, as I say, an opportunity in the case of Shin to investigate and explore the Lost Soul complex in a much better way than they did with Kylo Ren, with all due respect. But share your thoughts on this in the comments down below, guys. What do you want to see for Shin the next time she appears on our screens? Let me know down below, and if you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.